Hi, I'm Garrett.
And I'm Katie.
She's not a hostage, I promise. So this is going to be our first video. We're going to be talking a little bit about a book that we are currently going through and applying to our lives. It's called Things I Wish I'd Known Before We Got Married by Gary Chapman. Gary Chapstick.
We did read it before we got married.
We did read it. But just to give some short intros, do you want to ease us into that?
We've been together for a little over a year.
Yeah.
We've been married for almost 2 months.
Yeah.
And Garrett has 3 children.
I've got a 6.5-year-old. I've got, from a previous relationship, a stepdaughter that I'm still blessed enough to have in my life. And then I've got twin daughters that are 4 and some change from that same relationship. And then...
And I have a 3.5-year-old son from
Yes.
a previous relationship. So we're a blended family.
We are.
Yes.
So, as Katie put it, the odds are stacked against us. But we're definitely determined to push through everything and seek help where we need help, and to make this a victory, because there is no other choice but victory. Alright, so just to give like a disclaimer, or like a warning, a heads up, this video will probably be super long because okay, so I've got like 4 pages of notes, and there's just so much introduction to most of this. We're introducing not only ourselves and our families and this new book, and maybe Steve. Steve, look at him. But so not only all these things, but we're kind of just going to be going through this together, so excuse it if it's not polished and perfect. I'm sure there'll be a lot of bloopers and outtakes, maybe, possibly. Depends. There may be a point where Katie just like kills me, and then she's got like a hand puppet. Hi, I'm Garrett, blah blah.
No,
But anyways, so the first book, like I said, that Katie and I want to go over is called Things I Wish I'd Known Before We Got Married by Gary Chapman, not Chapstick. And in the book, basically, he goes over a variety of topics that we should discuss with our dating partners. Let me get my notes all pulled up here. But just like a bunch of different topics, like finances and who should manage them. Let's see, responsibilities and expectations. So basically, who thinks should do what? Who thinks who should do what? Then it also includes love languages and some more like material, like mutual sexual fulfillment in relationships, different religious points or viewpoints that we may have in our relationship, and just kind of how to work things out like that, and different expectations from both physical and mental and emotional intimacy that we may have together. But hopefully our plan for the book is to go over 2 chapters each week, so going over 6 weeks worth of material. And I'll try my best to give my perspective from a husband's side, and then this one will obviously give her perspective from a wife's side. And I'm going to try not to talk too much, but it's kind of hard to do because she's still kind of new to the videos, and I kind of do them sporadically. But we'll take it from there. But we're also planning to talk about how we've taken the ideas from this book and hopefully a couple of others, and how we've incorporated them into our marriage, and then discuss compromises that we've both come to. So, do you want to talk about the first chapter?
First chapter talks about... first chapter is called Being in Love is Not an Adequate Foundation for Building a Successful Marriage.
That's a mouthful and a fun pill to swallow. So just to read that back, being in love is not an adequate foundation for building a successful marriage.
Right, because you first go through the honeymoon phase.
Yeah.
And you look past all the flaws.
Yeah.
And there's the infatuation.
There is. So with the infatuation, there's a lot of different things that we tend to do for our spouse or for our significant other that we don't really consider to be a chore. Like whenever Katie and I were first dating, to try and like woo her, fawn her. Wait, no, I don't even know if this is the right word. Anyways, words for Katie. Like I would go out of my way on my days off, and I remember there was one day that I kept asking her stuff, and like I can't remember how the conversation came up, but there was
I think I left a bag at your house.
Well, yeah, no, but there was like before a couple days ago we had talked, or not ago, but like a couple days prior to that we had been drinking some Southern Butter Pecan coffee creamer, not straight, like obviously in coffee, but so I knew she really liked that, and I knew she liked coffee, so I went to Starbucks and I got her some coffee, and I got her some coffee creamer, and then went and got her some flowers, and I said, hey, I think I forgot a bag at your house. And she's like, what bag? And I'm like, I think it's a Walmart bag. It's a white bag. Do you see it anywhere? She says, no. And I'm like, huh. And then, what did I do? I don't remember how I got you to go outside.
I don't know. You probably told me it was on the doorstep.
Yeah, something to the effect I told her it was on the doorstep, and she opened it up, and or opened the door, and there it was. She had Starbucks, and she had the Southern Butter Pecan, like the whole 16 gallons of it, and some flowers, and so it was super cute. And then she used to do some stuff for me too.
And I used to take food to work for you, and coffee and cookies, and make special trips into work to bring you stuff like that.
And we didn't think it was super inconvenient. I mean, we both
spending the money and spending the time to go out of our way like that wasn't a chore.
Exactly, and it's safe to say that we both fell pretty head over heels for each other really quick. Now, this is the honeymoon feelings are good, and they're definitely things that we should have. Like the desire and the joy that you feel towards your partner are beautiful and good things. But the feelings are not the foundation for a satisfactory marriage, and that's kind of the hard pill to swallow there. As this book states in the first chapter and in the title, well, not in the title, but in the first chapter, being in love is an emotional and obsessive experience. However, emotions change and obsessions fade. So once these things fade, we start to take note of the differences that we have in viewpoints, in spiritualities, and raising children, different mannerisms that we have, and just different things like that. So like some things that I started to take notice of Katie, and this is you see that look? But some differences that I noticed is that she was a little obsessive about things. Like when it came to buying kayaks, like I was just able to go out and buy a kayak, and she's freaking out about it, so I bought her kayak, and I was like, well, let's go kayaking. But she's always had to have everything down to a T. And another thing that I noticed was that she was a morning person, like an up and at 'em morning person. And your boy is not a morning person. Your boy likes to sleep in and then wake up 5 minutes before he has to go to work, and then go to work.
And it's Saturday, and I was up at 5:30 this morning.
Yeah, and I was not. But that's in retrospect, she had her things that she noticed about me too, such as
like leaving clothes on the floor and not rinsing your dishes before you put them in the sink. What else did I put? I think there was a pretty long list. I'm just kidding.
Okay.
But we've also noticed different ways that we parent our children and different ways to discipline our children, and we've had to also find our roles in their lives as well as parenting them, and so it's been
because it's
a whole adjustment period between the honeymoon phase and the next phase. It's been
it's such
adjustment.
It's such a weird dynamic. Like for me, not only do I have the twins, there's like a fluffy. I know there's a fluffy. But for me, I not only have my twins, which I'm used to parenting my way, but I've also got Amberlyn, which is my stepdaughter, which I have to parent in kind of a different way because she's my stepdaughter. And then with Benjamin, I have to parent him a little differently than I parent the twins because that's my other stepson, but I have to parent him differently than I parent Amberlyn because it's not from that relationship, it's from this relationship.
Yeah.
So it's all about finding how to parent each other's kids, but
and try to be fair too at the same time.
and that is super hard to do because like Benjamin is used to one thing and the twins are used to another and Amber's used to another. But this book, thankfully, I think covers some of those topics. So we'll delve more into those other heavier topics and how we've compromised on those in later videos as they pertain to the different chapters that we're reading. So basically, to close out the first chapter, it's real short, sweet, and just breaking down the fact that there's the honeymoon phase, which is all fine and dandy, but we have to realize that those feelings are not what's going to set us up for a successful marriage. And to close out the chapter, Chapman states that, in quotations, "I believe that the primary purpose of dating is to get to know each other and examine the intellectual, emotional, social, spiritual, and physical foundations for marriage. Only then are you able to make the wise decision to marry or not to marry." And then Katie and I both agree that it's important to discuss the topics in depth with your partner that are in these books, because even though this book is like 140 something pages long, this book alone has helped us see past the rose-colored glasses and help us see our relationship for what it is. And it's not some big, beautiful, blossoming flower, but just like flowers have to bloom, sometimes they wilt and you need to prune and you need to take care of. So yes, it's pretty to buy someone a flower, but that person then has to take care of it if they don't want the flower to die. Speaking of which, she's been like taking care of the same flower that I got her since what? Is that the first flower I got you?
It was one of the first ones.
One of the first ones. She's got it sitting upstairs and she's taking care of it.
It's growing.
It is growing.
Yeah.
It is good. But yeah, so that's the basis of the first chapter. So if you want, you can pause it here. We'll give some time to pause. Pause here. Just kidding. To be able to answer the questions that we're going to put down in the comments, just to kind of stir up some conversation for you guys. In the second chapter, we get to explore another title, which is fun. That is, "I Wish I Had Known Romantic Love Has Two Stages." Now we get a chance to really open up the can of worms that we brought out in the beginning of the last chapter. So quite a few people may be asking, what effort is there for us to really put out there if we're both really in love with each other?
A lot.
Yeah. I wrote on here the awesome question. Katie and I will be happy to answer this, but you can tell by her beaming face and her smiles she is more than happy to answer this. So, in the examples that we gave of the silly things that we did for each other, they were silly and sweet and very out of our way gestures. And Chapman explains in the second chapter that when we're in love or when we're in that honeymoon phase, that we freely do things for each other without the thought of cost or sacrifice, and that person that we love seems to be perfect, at least for us. And we didn't really consider it a chore to go all the way to the store to get coffee, and then all the way to the other store to get creamer, then all the way to another store to get flowers, and just to drop it off at her door. And she didn't think it was a super big inconvenience to be able to go, prep stuff for, I don't know what she did, I wasn't there.
Make a bunch of cookies for you right before my shift and almost be late for work. And
wait, were those the hot cocoa cookies?
Go get you roses for Valentine's Day.
That's right. And to which Mr. Steve, they were. It was like blue water and with white roses, and Mr. Steve knocked it off onto my white carpets, and I have a big blue stain about this big.
Anyway, we're
upstairs.
working on that. But
yeah. But once life begins picking up, like in our case, we both start working full time. We both obviously have the children, but the children start to become more of a bigger factor into it. Different church schedules. We both have different errands, obligations, and new shiny feelings begin to wear down a little bit. So now what was once a spontaneous decision to see the other person smile has become an idea that we contemplate and that we have to put effort into finally acknowledging that there's a sacrifice of our time in doing these things. So, not only have the new shiny feelings gotten a little worn out, But as we said before, you start to notice the little differences and how maybe, just maybe, the person doesn't make you happy as easily as they once did, and vice versa. And as I so beautifully put in my notes, dun dun dun! You've now reached the second stage of romance.
What he's trying to say is that marriage is hard work.
Yes, it is, especially
And
when
I've
you're
heard
married
that.
to me. Mm-hmm.
I've heard that before, but now we're living it.
Yeah. And as a good friend of mine, and I'm not going to rat him out, because if you watch it, you know who you are. As a good friend of mine once said, I make marriage difficult. I make marriage difficult. She makes it easy. I make it difficult. But don't fret. There's a lot of times, and I'll be transparent in this. Even though we've only been married for 2 months, there's been a lot that we've gone through, and there's been times where I'm like, did I marry the wrong person? That's kind of a heavy thing, because a lot of people don't want to admit that. Because when you're married, everything's supposed to be happy, hunky-dory, and perfect. And there are just some days where life kind of piles up, and emotions get misdirected, and you wonder, man, did I do the right thing? Chapman in this chapter says that these feelings are 100% normal, and that made me feel a lot better. He describes the second stage of love as more of an intentional stage, way more intentional than the first, and that it requires work in order to keep the emotional part of the relationship alive. It's worth noting as well that he says for those who make the effort to transition from stage 1 to stage 2, the rewards are astounding. So he speaks about his history as a marriage counselor and how he began noticing patterns in the complaints of spouses that he would counsel. He summed them up into 5 different categories and called them the 5 love languages. That's 5 love languages. He goes on to explain that each person speaks their own love language, which is comparable to how Katie and I speak English, obviously. Someone from Mexico presumably speaks Spanish, someone from China presumably speaks Mandarin, so on and so forth. Typically actions such as kind words, giving gifts, going out of our way to do something, whatever makes us feel loved, we tend to replicate those things to people that we love. However, Gary also takes note that if it is not his/her language, it will not mean to them what it means to us. So once we begin to realize what makes us feel loved, it doesn't necessarily make, those things don't make our significant other feel loved. Their responses to our actions and our words make a ton more sense, and we're able to identify more easily the areas of the relationship that we can improve on. And as the author puts it, we can learn how to express love effectively. Now, Katie and I are going to try not to dive too deep into this, the 5 love languages, because there actually is a book by Gary Chapman called that, and we'll be going over them.
We just bought it.
Yeah, we just bought it. I've skimmed over it before. She hasn't read it yet, but we've both done the quiz. In this book,
We've done the quiz a few times. Our love languages keep shifting.
that is true, but we'll dive all into that a little bit later, because that's a book that that we're going to go over eventually. But just to break it down quickly, the 5 love languages he's identified are words of affirmation, acts of service, receiving gifts, quality time, and physical touch. So I have some fun examples here. If you really enjoy your significant other complimenting you,
You look great today.
thanks, babe. Words of affirmation is for you. If you feel appreciated when you come home and see your significant other has done the dishes or prepared prepared dinner, acts of service would be your language. If surprise flowers or your favorite coffee creamer, which you can't drink anymore.
I'm drinking it right
Being
now.
genuinely, what's the matter with you? Restocked by your loved one, then receiving gifts may be your language. If having a movie night or one-on-one dinner without any children or any distractions, if that speaks to your heart, then quality time would be your love language. And lastly, if getting a long embrace or a sweet kiss from your significant other makes you feel all warm and bubbly, then physical touch would be your love language. So Chapman says there's a couple of different ways we can discover our primary love languages, the one that makes us as individuals feel loved the most. We can observe our own behavior, we can observe what we complain about, and we can observe what we request most often. So for the first example, she cleans all the time, like all the time. And she makes me lunches and bathes the kids. She does laundry, feeds cats, changes linens, friggin' superhero. Just by observing her own behavior, or me observing her behavior, we can both know that one of her love languages would be acts of service. For this second example, when I clean the house, fill the cars with gas, gather up the dirty dishes for her to wash, and she doesn't say anything to me, I might say, I cleaned all day and I filled the cars, so you didn't have to. You didn't even say anything to me about it. My love language would be words of affirmation, acknowledging that I did things for you, my dear. So, third example, our schedules are crazy busy. And yes, I'm going to read this off of the paper because,
It's a lot to keep track of.
It is. But Mondays and Wednesdays are the most fun days that we have here in the McVeigh household. We get up at around 6 a.m., we get dressed, we get breakfast and lunch packed, we get the kids awake and fed, we get their shoes and their coats on, I drive them all the way across town, drop the twins off at their grandma's, drop Benjamin off at his school, come back to the house around 7:30, kiss this beautiful thing, then we pray, and then we go off to work, and then I work an 8 to 6, she works an 8 to 5, then she gets the kids, gets dinner ready, we eat dinner around 6:15, I go to church around 6:30 because I like to help out, leave the church around 8:30, we get the kids in bed by 9:30, and then I go work out till like 11 o'clock. So holy moly. Talk about having no time for yourself, let alone for each other. Usually at the end of these nights, when I inevitably wake up the lovely Sleeping Beauty, she usually tells me that she's sad because we hardly get any time to see each other. And she ends up requesting that we set a time, we set a day, that we don't have any kids, no cell phones, no distractions, no workouts, just the two of us. And I've come to know that that love language of hers is quality time. So those are just a couple of different ways that we can identify love languages in ourselves and in our partners. Just as a recap, we can observe our own behavior, we can observe what we complain about, and we can observe what we request most often.
Or you could take the 5 love languages test.
Or you could do that as well, which we'll put a link to that in the description.
We've got the link.
We
Yeah.
do got it. So I kind of did like a weird little analogy. Would that be what it's called? An analogy?
Yeah, sure.
Sure. Yeah. No.
It's a metaphorical story.
That because she's got the BA in English. I
No,
know.
just do it. Just go.
Okay, so anyway, so just imagine that Katie and I have tanks on our back. Now, even though I'm strong with big old muscles, I'm not referring to like big old military tanks. Like just imagine propane tanks. So we'll retract for a second. Imagine we have pink, love-filled propane tanks on our backs. At the beginning of our days, our tanks are empty, set to 0 zilch nothing with a big old sad face on them. Now, for example, we'll say Katie's love languages are physical touch and quality time. And we'll say mine are words of affirmation and acts of service. So as the day starts, I roll over and I give her a kiss. Boom. That is changing the love tank. I take the time to make her breakfast. Boom. Changing the love tank. She turns to me and says, "Thank you, darling, for spending time with me this morning." Boom. Changing my love tank. And lastly, we go downstairs and she says, "Last night when you were in the shower, I made you a 5-course lunch." Change in the love tank and in the dad bod. So on and so forth. But because we intentionally did those actions we knew the other person would appreciate, we now have full and happy love tanks at the end of the day. So, yay, because we made effort in our relationship. Now, let's say that Katie's love languages are receiving gifts, so when I give her stuff, words of affirmation like, "Good job, Toots." And mine will be receiving gifts as well and physical touch. So let's go through the day again. I roll over, give Katie a kiss. Nothing. It's not her love language. It may be one on the bottom end of the totem, so it doesn't speak to us as much. I take the time to make her breakfast. Remember, receiving gifts and words of affirmation are hers, not acts of service, so, little to nothing. She turns to me and says, "Thank you for spending time with me this morning." Nothing in the tank. We go downstairs and she says, "Last night when you were in the shower, I made you lunch." Nothing. Because for me, it's giving gifts and physical touch. You're touching my lunch, not giving me lunch. So at the end of the day, our tanks are empty, and we both feel like our significant other doesn't love us as much. Which I feel like is a lot of people's problems today. Mm-hmm. I know before we had really delved into that book, there was a lot of times where Katie would tell me that she didn't feel loved, and I told her I didn't feel loved. It was just kind of messy. So just like retracting on that, if you're married or if you're dating and you feel like your significant other doesn't love you, or if your significant other feels like that you don't love them, it's not that you're with the wrong person necessarily, or that you're married to the wrong person necessarily. It could just be that you guys aren't loving each other effectively the way that each other need to be loved.
Every time that we feel that way now, if it gets to a point where it feels that way, we'll just retake the love test. And just re-gauge it and see where we need to be and see where we need to focus.
Because once you take the love test, the love language test, your love languages change because you as a person change. Who you were 5 years ago is not the same person who you are now. I mean, who we were 2 months ago is not the same people we are now. Yeah. So it's always good to reassess yourself and go back over those love languages because they're constantly changing. And not only does it help you out, that way you can let your significant other know how you need to be loved, but your significant other can also let you know how they need to be loved. What?
I'm sorry.
Something is the matter with her. However, back to the example. So it's not like in that last example that we weren't doing anything for each other. I kissed her, I made her breakfast, and she said she appreciated my efforts and even cooked lunch for me. It's that, going back to what Gary Chapman had said in the second chapter, if it's not his/her language, then it will not mean to them what it means to us. So I can't stress the importance of realizing that what makes you feel loved and appreciated is not going to make your spouse necessarily feel loved and appreciated. So to wrap up the second chapter and the first chapter all together, dating is a time to get to know your partner, but when considering marriage, love is not the only thing that should determine if we get married. We must acknowledge that we have differences and that we have to make efforts and sacrifices in the future to maintain the emotional aspects of the relationship. Also, like I've said a couple of times, I really think that the 5 love languages is a vital tool to every relationship. It's key to understanding your significant other, and we're obviously not endorsed by Gary Chapman. We just believe that his book and the concept really helped our relationship, and we'd love more people to know about it. It's super awesome. It's a great tool. The quiz online is completely free to take, Just takes like 5 minutes out of your day.
And we've taken it several times.
Several times. And to reiterate for like the third time, we should always keep in mind that what makes us feel loved may be different from our spouse or significant other. And in order to keep the emotions alive in that relationship, it takes consideration and effort from both parties.
It's a lot of work.
It really is.
Constantly trying to mentally and put effort into it and schedule throughout your day on what you need to do for your partner, for yourself, and for your kids and everything.
Because it's a struggle. It's a struggle. To be honest with you, like some mornings, like some mornings I really don't feel like making breakfast for Katie. I mean, she usually has it done already, but if there's a morning she forgets, there's some mornings I really just don't want to. But I know that just because I don't want to doesn't mean, much of anything, because I know that it would mean a lot to Katie. It takes another 5 to 10 minutes out of her morning to have to get up, get the eggs, get everything going, pack it up, and have that breakfast ready. So it's just knowing when you have the extra time to be able to do something for your partner, just acknowledging that you should probably do it anyways, because it's good.
Yeah.
So we'll read more in depth about the love languages when we cover the book itself. But listed below in the description will be some questions that you and your significant other can discuss together. We'll also link the 5 Love Languages website, which we've already said like 10 times now, where you're able to take the love language questionnaire. And in the next video, we'll discuss an old myth, like mother, like daughter.
And like father, like son.
Yeah, it's not going to be fun. But we'll also talk about solving disagreements without arguing, or
disagreeing without being disagreeable.
That's what I was going to say, but I like that phrasing. But we thank you guys so much for taking time out of your day to be able to sit here and listen to us ramble and laugh and goof around for like the past 40 minutes. There'll be lots of fun bloopers that some will probably make it onto social media, some will probably not. But if you have any questions, feel free to leave comments below. Subscribe wherever the button is, that way you can catch up on more. And lastly, as I usually like to close out my vlogs, which this has now become our vlog, remember to live in love, one day at a time, 1 hour at a time, and 1 minute at a time. Until next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Sweet. So, first blooper, there's a dog outside and it's annoying and it's not barking. It's like a puppy and they just like have it outside and it's barking and it's going to distract me from braining. So, the blooper, my brain just like quit, super quit.
We're talking about how you're having to make more effort. Just go into that, making more effort about how you can cut this, right? You can cut this out.
Yeah, hang on, let me read my notes here.
You talk about how you leave that infatuation stage and then you enter the romance phase where it requires effort because marriage is hard work.
Marriage is hard work.
And then you take that and you incorporate the love languages into it. Talking about
my brain is gone. But
stop. Now my brain's gone.
So ready? 3, 2, 1. Katie, or not Katie, Amberlyn, yes my dear. More pictures.
My eye was hurting.
Looks like you might have a sty on your eye, honey. Just try not to touch it, okay? You've got a little bump there, and if you keep touching it, it's going to get really irritated.
So don't rub it, sweetheart, okay?
Because if you rub it, it'll just keep growing.
Okay. So we're going to finish up here.
We don't have very much longer left.
And then we'll go up and we can watch shows together, okay? Okay.
Yeah, we don't have very much longer to go.
It's taking a while for me to watch cartoons anyways, because it's taking a while for it to load.
I'm sorry. We'll go upstairs and hang out for a couple more minutes. We'll be done in a little bit, okay?
Okay.
Love you.
Yeah, it looks like she's getting a star.
Gross. Okay. Where were we?
Garrett, I don't know.
3, 2, 1. Okay. So, if you really enjoy hearing your significant other compliment you,
Love you.
that's not a compliment.
Can we bleep that out?
Okay. She turns to me and says, "Hey, thanks for this morning."
Stop.
Nothing.
Stop. Stop. You cannot say thanks for this morning. Sounds like.
Quit herping. You doing herp.
You can't do that.
Okay.
You gotta just stop.
Okay.
Hold on. Hold on. Hold on.
You good?
Mm-hmm.
So.
Hey, we're good. We're doing good.
Yeah, we are.
We got a lot of bloops going. We got bloop. Hold on. Whoa.
Okay, what?
Hold on. Hold on.
Coffee break.
Go. Man, I had it. Okay, where are you? Oh, yeah. Thanks for...
Thanks. Thanks for this morning.
You
Appreciate
can't do that. This is a nice...
What's the matter with you?
That's you.
Quit it.
That's you.
Wrong.
Wrong. This is wrong. That's false news. Fake news. You're wrong. Just wrong. It's the greatest. You're wrong. It's the best morning.
Stop.
Wrong.
What is the matter with you? Stop. It's something I'm actually gonna have to like take out completely.
Woo.
What's the matter? Okay. 3, 2, 1. Take it, Katie.
Where's my water?
I don't know.
I need to switch to water from coffee.
Alright, so after 15 minutes of trying to get this one down, so she turns.
I just snorted. Came out everywhere. We're gonna switch from like normal to like red faced in a clip.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
So
Go.
she turns to me and says, "Hey, thanks for whatever.
Spending time with me.
Thanks for spending time with me this morning."
Okay,
Nothing.
Stop. Do it over.
Okay.
Read it from the paper.